grew up, like, what was the decade you grew up in, about 30s or 40s? Is that right?
Well, I was born in the 20s and grew up in the 30s and 40s.
What was family life like when you were growing up? Was it like, kind of in comparison to what it is today?
It was a little bit like it is today, other than the fact that I don't think it was quite as hectic. For one thing, that there were very few women who worked outside of the home. Possibly it might have been a little closer knit due to this reason. Everybody was a little closer.
Do you think maybe any of the close-knitness came from the fact that you couldn't really travel so much, and maybe the children that grew older, they couldn't move so far away from home?
Well, sure, I'm sure this had a lot to do with it. Now that you have to take the economic situation into view of the whole thing. We didn't have the money, we didn't have an automobile when I was growing up. We didn't have an awful lot of things that everybody takes for granted today.
Yeah, like the phone.
Right, like the phone. The first phone that I can remember having was the type that was hanging on the wall that you turned the crank.
Kind of like in Lassie.
Yeah, same deal. Everybody on the party line would be on there listening or talking.
That wouldn't be any fun.
If you needed an courier, where you would ask them, could they please get off once you had a phone with you?
Yeah. Well, who lived in the home with your family?
Before living in a home with the family, nobody other than my own family lived in with us.
Yeah.
Now, the great-grandmothers and things like this would come and visit and stay for a while. Occasionally, and maybe stay for a few months, something like this. Living there probably didn't.
Because I'd read an article about there was a woman that they felt sorry for because she couldn't get married for some reason. She didn't get married, and she lived with the family. She was an aunt or something. Remember that? It was like an article in Reader's Digest where she wrote her it was like Aunt Edith or something, her lessons for living, and she had these things written down. Maybe you didn't read that.
Yeah, I did see that.
But you didn't have anybody like that?
No, we didn't have anybody like that to live there permanently.
Okay, what did your family do to support itself economically?
Well, there was a time, of course, this was going through the Depression right at the time. Sorry, back at that time. My dad had worked at what was the Dugal Kitchen Cabinet Factory, and this went under during the Depression and at this time. And in the end up, he was very lucky to get a small paying job at the Ing Ridge, which was the enameling plant on the west side of Frankfurt. And I know at this time that we lived on East Walnut Street. Dad would walk from there to the enamel and back daily.
It's not a short walk.
No, that's not a short walk at all. And his pay would amount to about $12 every 2 weeks, was about the amount of pay that he would get for that job. So to supplement the income, what I can remember well, my dad was a very good hunter, and he was a tremendous rabbit cleaner. So when he would get off work in the morning, he would take his shotgun and his shells, and he would go out hunting. And it's whatever he could get. As I say, he was an exceptionally good shot, and he would clean the game real well. He would hunt rabbits, clean them, and before he would go to bed to rest up and go back to work at night to get rich again, he would have the rabbits all dressed and everything. I would deliver them downtown to the grocery stores for a quarter apiece. And I remember that time that you had to leave 1 foot on the rabbit so they could tell they were rabbits, and everybody was slipping cats in them.
Oh my goodness.
So this is this is one way that he would supplement the income. Now this was during the Depression, and as things went on and started to improve, and when the electrical moved to town, which made wooden body station wagons.
Mm-hmm.
In the plant, the battery factory done today. They hired my dad to come back into the mill room as foreman of the mill room for them. And things, they did improve considerably. And by that time, I was getting up into school, and I was getting old enough that I'd work weekends at a filling station downtown all the time, washing cars. And this all, anything to help supplement the income went along. And that all with paper routes and whatever was supposed to be done.
Seems like really, in the light of the economic state of the nation during that time, you weren't really doing too poorly, considering.
Well, I'm a firm believer no one has to do that poorly if they're willing to do whatever is available to do.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, and this is one that kind of going back to inside the house. What kind of chores were assigned to what people? Like mowing the lawn or doing the dishes, that type of thing?
So my mother was a great one to believe that every piece of furniture in the house would be dusted daily.
Oh my goodness. She still is, too.
You're right. The
ripe old age.
dishes would be done, the windows would be washed, the yard would be mowed, and the fact that I was the only boy in the family made no difference. I got my turn of doing dishes,
Well, that's neat.
or just whichever there was coming along to be done. I got my part to do.
Did your sisters ever do much of the things that you got to do?
If you're talking about the outside work, no. No, I
Maybe
didn't
you
get
got a
that.
raw deal.
And then when it comes to going to the country, I usually got the job for her folks to take care of their yard. And then that also included cleaning out the hen houses, this is where they raise chickens all the time. And this was always a nice job, too.
Well, did your grandparents pay you for doing that?
No, they fed me well. And back at that time, you didn't get a whole lot of pay for anything.
Because I just know nowadays, I mean, you do anything, you get paid for it. I mean...
No, I will say that my grandmother, I did, as I turned 16 and got a driver's license, I did occasionally get to use her car. This was after I would clean it inside and out, put a good coat of hand-rubbed wax on it. Then I'd get to use it for an evening, maybe.
Sounds like that one time I got to take the car to Lafayette during the afternoon.
Yeah, about that.
I see now whenever you got that.
Yeah, you know.
Okay, what kind of things did your family do for recreation or vacations?
Well, for recreation or for vacation, we really, for years, didn't have too much of a vacation. This, again, was mainly due to the fact that the economy like it was. As I say, we didn't have an automobile. This was pretty tough to go to much of any place without an automobile. We would go fishing. Probably the main thing, the entire family was very active in church work, church picnics, this type of thing.
Didn't Grandpa Pony, didn't he preach sometimes?
Oh, he could take the place of a preacher. He was a Sunday school teacher for years and years, superintendent of the Sunday school. He also was the teacher of his church Sunday school class for years and years. He was very active in church work. Grandmother took care of the music at the church normally. One of my sisters was the church pianist. This was back in the days when nobody was paid for anything they did in church. It was all free gratis.
Yeah.
So you would go to church, at least you would go on Sundays and Wednesdays. I can well remember that, every Wednesday night with prayer meeting. And you didn't miss that unless you got a little older and had a good excuse.
Yeah. Homework or something.
Right.
So really you didn't do a whole lot of fancy traveling or anything?
No, we did very little. In fact, until the time that I went into the service, which is another thing, in my time of growing up, at the time I was a sophomore in high school, was about the time that we had World War II break out, and you pretty well knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So I doubled up like several other people and got my credits at the end of 3.5 years, and left with good friends for the Navy. But when you're traveling, other than one time my uncle took me just over the line into Michigan, I had never been out of Indiana, other than that one time until I went into the service.
And then you were not only out of Indiana.
You're right.
You went about everywhere.
Out of the country, just about every place.
Boy, you sure have been a lot of different places. How much time would you say was spent in family activities? I mean, how much time was your family spent together? Like you say, nowadays things are so much more hectic.
Well, we were together as far as growing up, more as a family, as I say, mainly in the church activities and things like this. Of course, there wasn't any television. Maybe we would listen to some radio programs together. And I don't want to lead you astray. I don't necessarily think this is better than what it is today.
Yeah.
I really think that there are a lot of things today are better and more advanced. And they're much better for the kids to do, and I think they have a much broader outlook on things. So I don't think the kids are any worse off today at all.
Well, that's good to know. It's comforting. After all, I say the family doesn't spend enough time together, and I don't know. I know that I feel like I appreciate my family a lot more, just because I know I don't have to be with them all the time. You know, like my mom is one of my very, very best friends, and that's a lot of it's because I don't really get a chance to see her very often, and so.
Well, this is because you have learned a great thing in your young life that you don't have to be with somebody that doesn't know how you feel.
Yeah.
And this is important.
That's good to know. Well, it's good to know that even though things were different then, they weren't necessarily better. They're just different.
Just different. You're so right.
Well, thanks a lot. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
I want to say hi to Shep. Hi, Shep. Changes are pretty obvious. I think a lot of it, I believe, has to do with the fact that the economic state has changed. Also, we aren't involved in a war with people. So many people, like my grandfather, had to go and fight in the war. And I think it has